soft earth again, a great sprawling, spineless heap, at little Eve Edgarton's feet. Unflinchingly, as if her wrists were built of steel wires, the girl jumped up and pulled and tugged and yanked his almost dead weight into a sitting posture again. "My, but you're chock full of lightning!" she commiserated with him. Out of the utter rage and mortification of his helplessness, Barton could almost have cursed her for her sympathy. Then suddenly, without warning, a little gasp of sheer tenderness escaped him. "Eve Edgarton," he stammered, "you're a brick. You must have been invented just for the sole purpose of saving people's lives." "Oh, you've saved mine all right," he acknowledged soberly. "And all this black blasted night you've nursed me and fed me and jollied me without a whimper about yourself, without a—" Impulsively he reached out his numb palmed hand to her, and her own hand came so cold to it that it might have been the caress of one ghost to another. "Eve Edgarton," he reiterated, "I tell you you're a brick. And I'm a fool and a slob and a mudhead, even when I'm not chock full of lightning, as you call it. But if there's ever anything I can do for you—" "What did you say?" muttered little Eve Edgarton. "I said you were a brick," repeated Barton a bit irritably. "Oh, no, I didn't mean that," mused the girl. "But what was the last thing you said?" "Oh," grinned Barton more cheerfully, "I said if there was ever anything I could do for you anything." "Would you rent me your attic?" asked little Eve Edgarton. "Would I rent you my attic?" stammered Barton. "Why in the world should you want to hire my attic?" "So I could buy pretty things in Siam or Ceylon or any other queer country and have some place to send them," said little Eve Edgarton. "Oh, I'd pay the express, Mr. Barton," she hastened to assure him. "Oh, I promise you there never would be any trouble about the express. Or about the rent." Expeditiously as she spoke she reached for her hip pocket and brought out a roll of bills that fairly took Barton's breath away. "If there's one thing in the world you know that I've got, it's money," she confided perfectly simply. "So you see, Mr. Barton," she added with sudden wistfulness, "there's almost nothing on the face of the globe that I couldn't have if I only had some place to put it." Without further parleying she proffered the roll of bills to him. "Miss Edgarton, are you crazy?" Barton asked again quite precipitously. Again the girl answered his question equally frankly and without offense. "Oh, no," she said. "Only very determined." "Determined about what?" grinned Barton in spite of himself. "Determined about an attic," drawled little Eve Edgarton. With an unwonted touch of vivacity she threw out one hand in a little sharp gesture of appeal, but not a tone of her voice either quickened or deepened. "Why, Mr. Barton," she droned, "I'm 30 years old, and ever since I was born I've been traveling all over the world in a steamer trunk. In a steamer trunk, mind you! With Father always standing over every packing to make sure that we never carry anything that isn't necessary. With Father, I said," she re-emphasized by a sudden distinctness. "You know Father," she added significantly. "Yes, I know Father," assented Barton with astonishing glibness. Once again the girl threw out her hand in an incongruous gesture of appeal. "The things that Father thinks are necessary!" she exclaimed softly. Noiselessly as a shadow she edged herself forward into the full light till she faced Barton almost squarely. "Maybe you think it's fun, Mr. Barton," she whispered. "Maybe you think it's fun, at 30 years of age, with all your faculties intact, to own nothing in the world except a steamer trunk full of the things that Father thinks are necessary." Very painstakingly on the fingers of one hand she began to enumerate the articles in question. "Just your riding togs," she said, "and 6 suits of underwear, and all the United States consular reports, and 2 or 3 wash dresses, and 2 good enough dresses, and a lot of quinine, and a squashed hat, and—" very faintly the ghost of a smile went flickering over her lips, "and whatever microscopes and specimen cases get crowded out of Father's trunk." "What's the use, Mr. Barton," she questioned, "of spending a whole year investigating the silk industry of China if you can't take any of the silks home? What's the use, Mr. Barton, of rolling up your sleeves and working 6 months in a heathen porcelain factory just to study glaze if you don't own a china closet in any city on the face of the earth? Why, sometimes, Mr. Barton," she confided, "it seems as if I'd die a horrible death if I couldn't buy things the way other people do and send them somewhere, even if it wasn't home. The world is so full of beautiful things," she mused. "White enamel bathtubs and Persian rugs and the most ingenious little egg beaters and—" "Eh?" stammered Barton. Quite desperately he rummaged his brain for some sane sounding expression of understanding and sympathy. "You could, I suppose," he ventured not too intelligently, "buy the things and give them to other people." "Oh, yes, of course," conceded little Eve Edgarton without enthusiasm. "Oh, yes, of course. You can always buy people the things they want. But understand," she said, "there's very little satisfaction in buying the things you want to give to people who don't want them. I tried it once," she confided, "and it didn't work. The winter we were in Paraguay," she went on, "in some stale old English newspaper I saw an advertisement of a white bedroom set. There were 11 pieces, and it was adorable, and it cost £82, and I thought after I'd had the fun of unpacking it I could give it to a woman I knew who had a tea plantation. But the instant she got it she painted it green. Now when you send to England for 11 pieces of furniture because they are white," sighed little Eve Edgarton, "and have them crated because they are white, and sent to sea because they're white, and then carried overland miles and miles and miles on Indians' heads because they're white, you sort of want 'em to stay white." "Oh, of course it's all right," she acknowledged patiently. The tea woman was nice, and the green paint by no means altogether bad. Only, looking back now on our winter in Paraguay, I seem to have missed somehow the particular thrill that I paid £82 and all that freightage for." "Yes, of course," agreed Barton. He could see that. "So if you could rent me your attic," she resumed almost blithely. "But my dear child," interrupted Barton, "what possible—" "Why, I'd have a place then to send things to," argued little Eve Edgarton. "But you're off on the high seas Saturday, you say," laughed Barton. "Yes, I know," explained little Eve Edgarton just a little bit impatiently. "But the high seas are so dull, Mr. Barton, and then we sail so long," she complained. "And so far. Via this, via that, via every other stupid old port in the world. Why, it'll be months and months before we ever reach Melbourne. And of course on every steamer," she began to monotone, "of course on every steamer there'll be some one with a mixed up collection of shells or coins, and that will take all my mornings. And of course on every steamer there'll be somebody struggling with the Chinese alphabet or the Burmese accents, and that will take all my afternoons. But in the evenings, when people are just having fun," she kindled again, "and nobody wants me for anything, why then, you see, I could steal way up in the bow, where you're not allowed to go, and think about my beautiful attic. It's pretty lonesome," she whispered, "all snuggled up there alone with the night, and the spray and the sailors' shouts, if you haven't got anything at all to think about except just what's ahead, what's ahead, what's ahead. And even that belongs to God." She sighed a bit ruefully. With a quick jerk she edged herself even closer to Barton and sat staring up at him with her tousled head cocked on one side like an eager terrier. "So if you just could, Mr. Barton," she began all over again. "And oh, I know it couldn't be any real bother to you," she hastened to reassure him, "because after Saturday, you know, I'll probably never be in America again." "Then what satisfaction," laughed Barton, "could you possibly get in filling up an attic with things that you will never see again?" "What satisfaction?" repeated little Eve Edgarton perplexedly. "What satisfaction?" Between her placid brows a very black frown deepened. "Why, just the satisfaction," she said, of knowing before you die that you had definitely diverted to your own personality that